Our guest today, Dr. Tracy Wilen, is a prominent thought leader on the impact of technology on society, work, and careers. Stay tuned and hear what she has to say about these topics.
Welcome to The Better Part, a program that encompasses a diverse spectrum of topics important to our community, which we hope will both inform and entertain you. We invite you to sit back and enjoy the program.
Dr. Tracy Wilen is the author of 11 books on technology and business topics, as well as a global keynote speaker. She's a regular contributor to media outlets such as CNN, CBS, Fox, and the Wall Street Journal. She has also held executive positions at Apple Computer, HP, Cisco Systems, and the Apollo Group. And she has been a visiting scholar at Stanford University. Welcome, Tracy. It's such a pleasure to see you here today.
Oh, thank you, Grace. Thanks for having me.
I don't think I've ever met anybody who has written 11 books. I hardly know where to start.
Oh, there's a lot of people, believe me, who have a lot of books out there, but it's a difficult chore, but I really enjoy the end result, which is getting to meet people like you.
Well, let's start with the recent Huffington Post article you have written, and it's called Click on Your Careers. Tell us about this blog.
Oh, sure. So I write for the Huffington Post a lot, and this particular blog on Click on Your Career was about the reality that people are living longer. And as a result of that, people are working longer. And a lot of people aren't really prepared for that. Many of us have been geared up to work maybe only 30 years, but the reality is that we'll be working for 50 or 60 years. So I encourage people to start clicking in on thinking about their career and career planning.
So how much time do Americans spend on their careers versus other activities?
You know, that's a good question because realistically, 40% of Americans actually don't spend time on planning their careers. In fact, we spend more time planning our weddings, buying a car, picking out outfits, and planning dinners and vacations than we actually do on our careers. So it's sad that people don't spend more time because if you think about it, if half your life is working and a third of your day is spent doing the task of work, maybe we should think a little more about planning our careers.
Now, there's been a lot of press recently on college students not being able to find jobs after they graduate. How much time are they spending on career planning?
You're bringing up a very good point because you would think that college students out of anyone would spend more time.
Absolutely.
Actually, almost 75% of college students actually don't or spend under 2 hours a week on their career planning, and 15% absolutely don't even think about it at all. So you would think that this community, this population, would be thinking about their career during college and making plans for after college.
Now, why do you think people spend so little time on career planning?
You know, Grace, and we had talked about this at some researchers at Stanford, I think people live in the present. It's very difficult for people to think about the future or project the future. And so it's hard to plan for it so when you're living in the present and just getting through day to day. What people don't realize is that life is moving much faster now. So actually there's even more onus on us to think about tomorrow more than we did in the past, and that the future is actually going to come to us sooner than we expect.
So what can educators and parents do to encourage students and themselves, actually, motivate themselves to spend more time on this critical activity?
You know, I would encourage parents, and I do encourage parents and students to start thinking about their skills and their interests earlier in their education career. Start to look at the kinds of clubs that you join, the classes that you take, and start to think through what you like and what you don't like, and also what you're good at and what you're not good at, so that by the time you get out of high school or college, you can start to make some concrete plans, rather than just drifting through college and taking courses. I also think that the skill of planning and goal setting is very important for students so that they can start to connect the dots of how a goal can help them get to an end result. And the third area is that I think parents should help students connect the dots between education, skills, and careers. That actually what you take today in college or high school can help a positive outcome for you in terms of jobs and careers.
Yeah, I think lots of students have problem connecting that. Like, for instance,
Yes.
taking calculus.
Yes.
How is that going to affect my future career?
Exactly. I mean, I have a story where a lot of parents are now really getting more involved with introducing students to role models, because they don't see how the calculus or how science can actually have a glamorous career. And some parents are telling me they went out of their way to find people in the sciences and in math who were doing really interesting jobs with travel and exciting and TV and radio and all this, so that the student could see how calculus had a really cool kind of aspect to it. So yeah, I think role modeling is one way, and there's many other ways too.
What tips can you give to us on the right attitude?
Attitude, I think, is really important, and I think a lot of people don't talk about it enough. Employers are looking to hire people with positive attitude. In fact, some employers will even tell you that a positive attitude can outweigh some skills that perhaps you don't have, because they really want you to come in and show that interest in the job. I also think if you're looking for a job or planning your career, it can be daunting. I mean, it can really be a full-time job. So if you approach it as my career is my adventure, how can I have a positive attitude and create the positive outcomes that I'd like to have in my career adventure? And I think attitude is a big component.
It's a really important component. Yeah.
It is, even for people who are laid off or not working right now. That's when you really need to think about, how can I wake up every day and be excited? You know, excited about that new adventure that I'm going to create for myself.
So how important is it that we understand our own interests and skill sets?
You know, Grace, I think it is very important. I think there's things that people are interested in, but they don't do them quite well. So maybe you're dreaming to be a rock star or a basketball player, but the reality is you get out on the court or on the stage and you're not very good at it. And then there's things that people are actually quite good at. And I think that the magic is if you can meld the two, your passion of what you're interested in with what you're good at. And, you know, jobs that really for longevity is all about being able to mesh the two together. So I think it is important to think through your interests, but also be very realistic about what your skills are.
And how important is it for everybody to be setting targets?
You know, I'm a big goal setter, and I think that you need targets because then you can set goals. Without a target, you don't have a direction. Without a goal, you can't set up sub-goals. Without sub-goals, you can't achieve or check off the box. So I'm a big check off the box kind of person. I think that people who have goals and targets are more inclined to get to where they want to be, really to get to the end state. There's nothing wrong with being opportunity driven. That is, if something comes up that maybe isn't in your plan. But I think that people have more success if they sort of set up an outline of goals and targets.
And you also said in the article that it's important for people to have a modern resume, an up-to-date resume. Can you discuss that?
Oh, sure, Grace. You know, the resume has changed quite a bit from when I got out of school. You know, just today the formatting is different. The fact that firms are using applicant tracking systems and electronics to scan resumes.
Right.
The ability to use keywords and skills so that you can get sorted. The ability to pass what we call the 15-second scan. So if someone is moving very fast, they can get the highlights very quickly. The fact that we're not doing laundry lists anymore of what we've done, but rather showing our proven results. The fact that metrics are highly desired. Did you increase sales? If so, by how much? Or did you create a new business, and what were the revenues associated with it? So I think resumes have really been overhauled. Now the good news is you can find help out online. Many of the job boards actually offer resume help. And also if you use LinkedIn, which is a major tool, you can actually put in your profile and have it format a resume for you. So I think there's a lot of help out there today.
Tell us more about LinkedIn. Some people might not be familiar with it.
So LinkedIn is a social networking platform, very much like a Facebook that you may have heard of, or some of the other social like Twitter. Except LinkedIn is dedicated to the professional group. So it's almost like, if you remember the Rolodex, that word may not be used too much anymore, but this is where you can create a whole series of networks of professional people. What's interesting about LinkedIn is that this is the place where actually recruiters and hiring managers go. right now it's the #1 stop that they look at to find candidates and actually to fill their jobs. So I think LinkedIn is a very important tool if you're looking for a job or if you're planning your career.
Is LinkedIn just in the United States, or is it a worldwide?
It's global, and actually now they have even included the college communities, which I think is a positive because now students can understand networking, understand what resumes and profiles should look like, skills. You know, there's a lot of embedded tools in LinkedIn and constant tutorials that people can look at on the website to how to prepare themselves for interviews, to meet people, to approach people for jobs. So LinkedIn is global and continues to grow.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. What tips can you give to people who are currently working so that they can improve their cross-functional teams and explore other opportunities within their own company and meet new people within their own company?
Sure. So I always encourage people, if you're working and maybe you don't like your job, look internally first. You think the grass is greener on the other side, but it's pretty hard to leave a company. But there's a lot of green grass inside your company, especially here in Silicon Valley. You have a lot of large companies, and the environment in one department may be completely different than in another department. So if you use your networks and try to be able to expand yourself into other departments. Now you can do that through networking. You can join cross-functional teams. And I also encourage people to pay attention to the corporate website. Listen to the earnings reports. Look at what the chief executives are saying. Really try to tap into the goals of the firm and figure out where you can move within the organization. I also encourage people to raise their hand for high visibility projects so that you can be remembered and perhaps get a mentor or a sponsor who can help you maneuver through the company.
Very, very good advice. And what about some tips for people who are not working?
You know, that's an interesting point because I did a study this past spring with Just Staff, which is a recruiting firm, of people who found jobs in 2013. And the question really was, how did you get your job? And the answers were pretty consistent. Same or similar industry. So for example, in high tech, stick to high tech. Don't make a right turn or a left turn into the hospitality industry. Number 2, same or similar functional area. So if you were in marketing, pursue marketing in another high-tech firm. Number 3 is networks. 85% of jobs today are still found through networking, except today you can do in-person networking or you can use a tool like LinkedIn. And number 4 is to keep active. So even if you're not working for revenue or money, you can be volunteering and showing that you're putting your skills to work, whether you're an accountant or a web designer or a TV camera operator. It's showing employers that you're not letting the grass grow under your feet while you're looking.
Right, those are very, very good points. Now, another blog you wrote for the Huffington Post is entitled Staying Employed in a Technology-Based World. What motivated you to write about this topic?
You know, Grace, I saw an article that was written about the realities of technology in careers, and that by 2020, about 75% of jobs would have a technology component. And it made me start to reflect on industries and how that change is really here today, and how important it is for all of us to look at how technology is playing in our area, in our jobs, and in our careers.
Especially here in Silicon Valley, where we're just surrounded by technology. But how about people who maybe a little bit older generation who are hesitant about getting into technology?
Yeah, so it's a good point. So if I look at different industries, for example, manufacturing, for example, has 3D printing, robotics. It would be worth trying to get on a team or learn about that technology while you're working in manufacturing. Once you do that, then you can start to understand how your career is changing. But in terms of, you know, people learning technology, I encourage people to take classes. I mean, I go down to Microsoft once a week and get tutored, and it's very inexpensive. I get 52 weeks, you get books, and basically you get one-on-one help. The Apple Store is known for doing that as well. I've also gone to Adult Ed, and I've also looked at online tutorials on YouTube. because I think YouTube is a phenomenal resource for visual tutorials. In fact, there's over 1 billion downloads every day on YouTube, so you can see how
1 billion?
Yeah,
Wow.
how useful it is for us to really use it as a tutorial tool. So there's a lot of venues. The last venue I'll talk to you about is actually something called Meetup. And Meetup actually was more popular here in the Silicon Valley, but it's gone viral across the United States. And basically, people get together over a common interest, hiking, or TV producing, or wine tasting. And actually, there's many that actually teach technology. So if you want to go and learn technology, you can go to a social media meetup group. And then you can learn one-on-one with friends and socialize while you're doing it.
Now, I actually know people who are technology phobic. I mean, they actually have a fear of the computer and anything, related to technology. Is there anything they can do to get over this phobia?
Yeah, so actually this came up in a recent speech that I gave in Europe, and people were saying, I hate technology. And then I started to remind them that there are more phones than people in the world today, and they're probably using a phone in some capacity. And that there's more downloads on YouTube, and that if Facebook was a country, it would be the 3rd largest in the world. So actually people are using technology. It's so embedded in our lives, from the ticket on Southwest to the ATM machine. But I encourage people to take something that has meaning to them, like a hobby. My mother started off with recipes. Right? How can I get a recipe up online? Then she moved into Skype because of her grandson. So take something that actually is useful for you and learn that technology. And then you'll find it's a language, and then you'll find you'll be able to expand it into other areas.
Oh, I think that's a great tip.
Yeah.
Start with something that interests you, such as finding recipes online. Yeah, that's fantastic. So for people who are working, it is important for them to stay abreast of their technology, isn't it?
I think so. I think, for example, if you're in the media, well, social media and streaming video is very important for this industry. It's a shift. For people who are in manufacturing, as I mentioned, robotics and additive manufacturing, 3D printing. For people in the healthcare industry, right, augmented virtual reality and robotics, genetic typing. There's a lot of technology, particularly in healthcare. All of us have an opportunity to really keep up on these trends and advance. We can advance ourselves if we get a little more technical, or at least understand the technologies and how we can use them in our careers. There's a saying out there, is either you can compete with technology or you can compete with technology. And my sense is that it can be a true asset.
Now, your latest book, you've written 11, and so your 11th book is entitled Employed for Life. Tell us about this book.
Sure. So as I mentioned in the beginning, that people are living longer, and as a reality, they are working longer. So Employed for Life is really a 360 look at careers today. And I interviewed HR managers, recruiters, people who got jobs, people looking for jobs, to really understand the complexities of career development in today's modern society. And so, for example, actually in the United States today, 1 out of 3 workers are actually part-time freelancers.
Oh, is that right?
That's a trend which is expected to increase, and some say up to 40% of the workforce by 2020 will be part-time or freelance. That's a whole new type of career. That's a portfolio career. How are you going to create revenue for yourself and keep yourself employed by having a lot of different gigs? So I addressed that, as well as many of the other hiring and recruiting issues that come up today, more so than in the past.
Now, what are companies doing as far as career development is concerned for their employees? Are they doing enough?
Well, some companies are doing a lot, and I think that's important. So, for example, culture came up as very important for the firm and for the employee. There's a point where you just get a job out of college, and then you might hit your 20s or 30s and realize you're in the wrong job.
Uh-oh.
You joined the wrong, you're in the wrong culture. You're a cultural misfit. And what are the signals? You're not getting anywhere. People aren't really listening to you. You're not getting the great projects. And so culture came up as a really important part, that if companies could give more transparency, how can I make it more visible to a future employee what they're getting into, as well as employees starting to research. Research the companies instead of just jumping for an open job. Understand is, can you work for a Facebook, which is run by Gen Y, or would you rather work for an IBM environment, which is run by baby boomers? I mean, there's differences. One is more process-oriented, one is more innovative. Where is your fit, and research about that? So I think that was a really important point that firms and employees brought up.
And I know that you're currently on a speaking tour on the topic of technology changing careers. What are some of the key points that you're covering on your speaking tour?
Well, I do talk about the reality of living longer. I think that's really important. I think number two is that companies are, within the age of technologies, A players are very important, which is top talent and automation. So think about it, the mediocre employee is can be replaced by either automation or a top player. So I think that's really important for people to think about. And we call this the T person, transdisciplinarity, having depth and breadth and a technology overlay to really make you successful. And I also talk about the importance of companies being more forthcoming about their culture and transparency, as well as career development opportunities for their employees, because many employees want to understand what's there for them, what resources are available, how are they going to manage their own careers. So I touch on all of those topics.
During your tour, what kind of questions are you getting?
Yeah, so, well, I get a variety of questions. So a lot of people ask, interesting, the younger generation wants to understand about work-life balance, more so than the older generation. They want to understand, are there firms out there that actually respect the fact that they want to work, but they're not working for life, that the employment is helping them have a life. And so I get a lot of questions around, how do I research firms to find out if they'll have maternity and paternity leaves, that they'll value, my volunteer work, or they'll respect the fact that I enjoy vacations and I don't want to come in and work on vacation. So I get a lot of that from the younger generation. I think the Gen X, which is the age between 32 and 52, the concerns are mostly about promotion. They did all the right things, they followed the rules,
Right.
And the baby boomers are still in their roles. So what happens to the Gen X group, right? And so we talk a little bit about looking internally, but maybe also externally, because there could be much more opportunities moving outside. I do get a lot of questions on technology because it's an overwhelming topic. And I, again, reflect with people on what technology do you really need to use. When I was a teacher, professor, I observed that my students were very visual. They were watching YouTube. And so I said, let me just learn how to make videos, because then I can integrate it into my class. And my students would say, more videos, less Tracy, right? But I just think it's, those are some of the questions that come up.
Now, in our busy world today and with our busy lives, how in the world do we find more time to focus on our careers?
Grace, that's a really good question. I encourage people to think about it as a daily event, such as like brushing your teeth, eating your breakfast, spend an hour or two. In the morning, you're reading your newspaper, start to think about doing one activity a day towards your career. You'd be amazed, 365 days in a year, as a lot of energy can be put around your career development.
Give me an example of this one activity.
Absolutely. So every morning I get up, I look at my Hootsuite dashboard, which is all the social media, which I have been learning. Number two is I always go to LinkedIn. I go to LinkedIn to see what jobs are out there, who's been viewing my profile, which is a lot of fun for people to do. What are some of the new breaking areas in technology, because there's headlines there now. And I look to see if there's someone I want to connect with. If you try to connect with 2 or 3 people a day, you'd be amazed at how many more people want to connect with you. And I might send someone an email and ask them about their job or career. Or if I'm interested in a specific company or technology, I might even ask them about that. And that only takes a half hour out of my day, and it's done very quickly.
Now, you were also a scholar, a visiting scholar at Stanford University in the Media X program. Tell us about that program.
Oh, that was a delightful program. I have been a Media X visiting scholar for over 10 years. And it's basically when you're working in a company, You can come to campus as a part-time scholar, do your academic research, but also involve some of your company initiatives. So when I was at Cisco, I involved my higher education strategy work, which I was looking at global education. When I was at Apollo, I looked at some of my initiatives around women. But but the Media X really looks at how technology impacts society. So it was a perfect fit for me because I do look at how technology changes society, work, education, and careers. And to me, that's it was just a delightful way for me to blend my background, which is business and academia, together.
And you were also an executive director, I believe, at the Apollo Research Group. Tell us about that.
Oh, sure. So I started a research center that was sponsored by the Apollo Group, and we looked at we conducted basically academic research studies on a variety of topics that were top of mind today, contemporary society. So actually, the Women Lead book is a result of 2 research studies from the Institute. One was a quantitative study, which is surveys of leaders across the United States, and one was a qualitative study of over 200 women who I personally interviewed on their views around leadership.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
That must have been an interesting
I
subject.
got the best learning because I had the opportunity to spend about 45 minutes with over 200 women leaders.
Wow.
And their advice was magnificent and helped me a lot with some of the choices and decisions that I was making in my career.
Sounds wonderful. Now, you were also awarded the San Francisco Women of the Year Award in 2002. Now, what did you do to get this honor?
So let's see, in 2002, at that time, I was doing a lot of work at Cisco with women in technology. I was, been in all kinds of technology jobs in Silicon Valley, and so part of my outreach was really teaching. So I taught a lot of night and evening and weekend courses, as well as just volunteer to talk to women as part of like a mentoring program.